Did you get that? So when
No,
it
I
said,
missed it. What
well, you did the right thing, and I'll explain after. So let's hit record. Sorry, presentation. Okay, so you're good to go. So Charlie, let's both move out of the way.
Performance anxiety. You don't have to be in here, do you?
No, but later
She'll see
on,
it
for when
now.
we talk about this, it might be useful. Would you prefer us to be out of here?
No. It's fine. It's just you're really close. So.
Okay, we'll get out of here.
Break a leg.
Yeah. So do I clap? Hi, I'm Dan McFarland. Welcome to the first lecture introducing you to organization. So that happens, right?
Excuse me?
If you screw up, what do you do? What's the...
Start again.
Okay. Hi, welcome to... Hi. Okay, now I'm really going to start. Hi, welcome to the introductory lecture on organizations. My name's Dan McFarland, and I'll be your instructor for this course. Let's begin with very simple questions, like, what is an organization? All too often, it helps a course to begin with our preconceptions. And it helps to know what the limits of a concept are. In particular, it helps to think about what is and isn't an organization. God, that's terrible. Hi, welcome to organizations. Batman could not get alone. Hi, my name's Dan McFarland. I'll be your instructor for this course. Blah. Blah, blah, blah. Hi, welcome to the introductory lecture on organizations. My name is Dan McFarland, and I'll be your instructor for this course. Let's begin with some very simple preconceptions and the basic term organizations. When we think of an organization, what do we have in mind? What is the limit or the boundary of the concept? When we think of organizations, we tend to think of very simple things like hospitals, schools, businesses, stores, and companies. But sometimes the kind of institutions we think of are a little more ambiguous, such as families, professional associations, and then there become more types of groups that we're not even sure fit the definition of an organization, such as social movements, friendship cliques, random collectivities, and isolated individuals. Are these organizations? What makes something an organization and what does not? A simple working definition is usually helpful at this point. And here, what we'd like to have is something that we can apply to many different contexts. So a very simple starting one might be organizations are groups whose members coordinate their behavior in order to accomplish shared goals or to put out a product. So let's consider that list again. What actually is or is not an organization in that list if we apply that definition? So for example, something that might be an organization in this case would be, again, companies, schools, families, and voluntary associations. All of those have particular roles. They're differentiated where people coordinate their behaviors with one another. The individuals follow certain rules. The group has a particular set of goals that they follow. Their behaviors follow a certain pattern. And the group has kind of a clear boundary to it. Something that's clearly not an organization, though, might be an isolated individual, right? We have to have a limit on this concept. It can't just be everything as an organization. Another thing that might not be an organization, or clearly isn't actually, is a random collection of individuals. Here we have no roles, no rules, unclear goals. The pattern of behavior doesn't really recur, and it's not even sure there's a boundary to a collectivity that lasts very long. Now, we do have ambiguous cases as well, where it's a point at which our concept starts to break down, where we have certain characteristics that hold but others that don't. And in a way, it's like they have a family resemblance, but the pile of sand, for each grain we move away, when does it stop being a pile? It's the same thing with organizations in the definition. At some point, we have phenomena that resemble somewhat of an organization, but it becomes ambiguous at a certain point. And these are things like street gangs. Here we might have roles, we might have some rules and goals, but the participants may be fluid, the goals may be changing, and onward. Social movements, too, are another example of where we have an ambiguous case, where individuals may be flowing in and out, where the goals may be ambiguous at times. For example, the recent Occupy Wall Street efforts had many different kinds of goals associated with that movement, and it wasn't clear it was organized well, and we started to question whether that had organizational characteristics. So, what is an organization again? Let's reflect on this a little further. Given the concept and given the definition we've laid out, it becomes clear that organizations can be almost everywhere in today's society. In fact, organizations have become so common, it's impossible to imagine living or developing or working in this world without experiencing them. So organizations serve many functions too. In particular, they socialize youth, whether that's in terms of schooling. Oh, I gotta redo that slide, sorry. So given the definition of what an organization is, and the let's try this slide again. Now that we have some idea of what an organization is, and we have some sense of how to define it, we can start to reflect on just how common they are. Organizations are everywhere in society. It's hard to turn a street corner or to walk even in a city without recognizing the influence of governments, the influence of rules and regulations that organize our lives. And these organizations that we encounter accomplish all sorts of functions and goals that we need in society to exist. There's an immense variety of these organizations. Struggling with this slide. Now that we have some definition of what an organization is, we can start to reflect on just how common they are. There are very few cases. Sorry, I got stuck on the fact that I keep saying Now that we have some, look at the camera. Now that we have some sort of definition in mind, we can start to reflect on just how common organizations are in society. Literally every street corner we turn, we will see organizations and we'll experience them. Now that we have some idea of what an organization is and what the limits of that concept are, we begin to realize just how common they are. Organizations are literally everywhere, but not everything. Every time you look at society and you reflect on organizations, you begin to realize just how many social functions they serve. A lot of these organizations serve socialization purposes, such as schools, or even there. I just wrote on the screen with a pen. It's probably not a good thing. Now that we have some idea of what the term organization means and what its limits are, we can begin to realize just how common organizations are in society. While they may not be everything, such as isolated individuals or just random collectivities, organizations are literally on every street corner and serve a variety of social functions. For example, if we think about all the variety that we have, some of these organizations serve socialization purposes, such as schools. Others help heal or provide kinds of services like knowledge. Yet others do entertainment. Others offer protection. And others provide goods and services, such as factories and grocery stores and the like. Organizations like these are the means by which we accomplish our collective goals and pursue kind of collective ends. Can you imagine society without schooling? Can you imagine it without these kinds of organizations? It'd be very difficult to do so. Organizations are so common that they've kind of become a medium through which we exist. My interactions occur within an institution called Stanford, or in classrooms, or within families. They don't frequently occur outside of an organization. We live in a world made up of these organizations, and that's clearly true. In fact, they're so common, organizations have kind of accomplished a thing status. We think of them as collective actors often, and in fact, we have contracts between organizations and legal codes that are affixed to them. So organizations are not just something we live in, they've kind of become an object that we interact with. Now, organizations So organizations vary greatly. Organizations are everywhere and they vary greatly. If we think about those dimensions of variance, things become quite complex. For example, some organizations are huge, like IBM, and others are pretty small, like a voluntary youth organization that's run out of a garage. Organizations also vary in which market sector they're actually occurring in. So some of these organizations occur in the private sector, others occur in the nonprofit sector, and they serve the public good and the like. I suck at this. So organizations are everywhere, and they've been around such a long time. Organizations are everywhere, and they vary greatly. What are the dimensions on which they vary, though? If we think about it, organizations can be dramatically different sizes. Some are huge, like IBM, with hundreds of thousands of individuals, or the US Army. Others are tiny, like a startup company run out of someone's basement with a few people. Organizations also vary in what sector they occur in. For example, some organizations take place within the private industry or private kinds of sectors, where the others take place in nonprofit or government sectors. Some of these organizations can be unions and associations like the PTA, or even a professional association like the American Sociological Association. So these are all kind of not-for-profits. In addition, the social structure of these organizations can vary dramatically. Some organizations have flat hierarchies, such as consulting firms that are organized on the basis of projects. Others are very horizontally distributed, like a university with many different departments. And yet others are kind of highly vertical. They have a lot of hierarchy in them, such as a military or a football team with different kinds of levels of differentiation. Organizations can also vary by the environmental context they're situated in. So we have to consider that certain organizations, like say Disney in Florida, has one kind of response to it than it does in Europe, where Europe Disney struggled with certain kinds of implementations that it didn't meet within Florida. So the cultural context shifted, and that affected how well it operated. In addition, we can think of different temporal contexts, right? So the federal government today is quite different than it was in 1790. An organization's situation in a time of recession is quite different than a time of economic boom. So an environment can mean multiple different things and can lead to variation in the kinds of organizational phenomena you observe. So organizations are everywhere. They're important. They serve a variety of functions for society and for the people in it. They have grown in importance over the last 50 years to the point where society is just replete of organizations. If we consider what society was like 300 years ago, the plethora of organizations was probably less. In addition, many things have changed in this organizational society over the last 50 years. For example, manufacturing has given way to more service labor, part-time subcontracting has grown, and so on. We've become more of an organizational world, but the nature of that world has shifted, as well as the kind of participants within it. More and more women are entering the labor force than they were before. Fewer children are occupying kind of labor roles. So this world, this organizational world, has shifted. So we have a ubiquity of organizations that has grown increasingly common, and in addition, increasingly varied and complex. Sorry, I need to end this slide with this, so I got all the way to this point, so I apologize. So the ubiquity and variability of organizations creates complexity and opportunities for organizational problems to arise. I'm going to try this one over. So organizations are everywhere, and with our concept in mind, we can begin to reflect on just how they vary too. Families aren't the same as a school. And we have to start to question on what dimensions do they differ. So organizations can be in a variety of forms today. In fact, they can vary in size. Some of these organizations are tiny startups that occur in people's basements. Others might be hundreds of thousands of individuals like IBM. A lot of these organizations can persist in entirely different sectors of the economy. For example, quite a few of these firms that we think of as organizations are in the for-profit sector, trying to sell a product or to create some kind of service. Others are kind of in the not-for-profit. Shit, I hate this. You know, it was never this complicated when I taught. How we doing in there?
Good. Let's get this stuff.
I got through a few slides,
Awesome.
but I keep flubbing.
Okay, so let's hit stop over here. Okay. Stop. And now let's hit stop. Let's escape out of here.
It's funny when you do it.
And let's hit stop here. Right?